Hello, and welcome to The Pert Ale, a solo basic fantasy RPG podcast. I am your host, GM Wolfgang, and today's episode is kind of a special one. In previous episodes, I had said that I wanted to make a character creation video, and that's what I'm going to do today. In the last episode that was recorded, episode 7, the party encountered a fighter magic user on their way out of the Old Island Fortress after Druindar and Aldrich were severely injured by some skeletons. Just on the party's way out, I rolled on the Game Master Emulator Oracle that the party encountered an unexpected ally, and the nouns that I got with that were Knight and Mage, and I decided to keep both of those and combine them together as a fighter magic user, so we'll be rolling that fighter magic user up today. I'm going to show you how I do it, which is not how it's written in the rules. I'll touch on what the rules are, but ultimately, if you get your hands on the core rulebook, they're easy enough to follow. I'll also show you some cool supplements that will help streamline some things, and I'll show you a supplement that's available for pre-generated characters as well. So let me pull up the core rules. For those of you that may not be aware, Basic Fantasy Role-Playing Game is a free-to-download, open-source role-playing game. You can find it at basicfantasy.org. And the PDF copies for the core rules and all of the modules and all of the supplements are completely free to download. If you decide to go with print versions, which I have for many of the modules, and I have 3 copies of the core rules, you buy them, from what I understand, as close to cost as possible. So Chris Gonnerman and company don't really make much money on this. It's a labor of love for them, and I greatly appreciate that about this game. As somebody who uses open source technology, I run Linux on my computer. OBS that I'm recording on is open source. My video editor is open source. My audio editor is open source. I really appreciate this being an open source game. Not only are the PDFs free to download, but also the open source word processor files, the .odt files. The version that I will be showing you today is the 3rd edition, the last release of the 3rd edition, which is release 107. This is the last version that is licensed under the Open Game License created by Wizards of the Coast, the company that owns Dungeons & Dragons. The 4th edition is out. They've moved away from the OGL to the Creative Commons license. At the time that they did this, there was some major concern that Wizards was going to remove the OGL, and that was going to put a lot of games, Basic Fantasy being one, in kind of like a frozen state, if I understand this correctly, that if the OGL went away, then Basic Fantasy could not continue to evolve. If they wanted to change anything or move anything forward, they couldn't do it under the OGL. They would have to stop what they were doing and just kind of like sit in time. But as Chris Gonnerman said on his YouTube channel, Basic Fantasy is alive. The community is alive, and the game is going to continue to grow and evolve. So they migrated over to the Creative Commons license. If you've not checked out Chris's YouTube channel, I will link it in the description. It's really cool to be able to watch the main guy behind Basic Fantasy address things, go over things in game. He's got things in depth that I won't go into because I am just a real play podcast, and he is set up to do a whole bunch. Right, like there's a whole video on combat. He also talks about this recent issue with a so-called church that totally ripped the game off without giving any credit, and whole bunch of drama of recent for the Basic Fantasy crew, but I believe they've ultimately got it worked out. Like I said, I'm using the 3rd edition. The 4th edition, from what I understand, is completely compatible with 3rd edition and any other releases of materials, so don't stress about the edition. I will say that there's a possibility that the page numbers are different, but all in all, the content should be pretty much the same. So for those, just to touch on the background of basic fantasy, if you aren't aware of what basic fantasy is and why it exists, it is a recreation of the 80s Dungeons and Dragons basic and expert rules. These were released in the 1980s as an introduction to Dungeons and Dragons, and I believe that their ultimate goal was for people to start here and then to move forward into Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, AD&D. I'm not going to show you any of the content of these books, but if you have the opportunity to look at them either in PDF form or definitely in print form, I would encourage it. One thing that you will note right out of the gate is that the format for Basic Fantasy matches these two books exactly. I mean, it really takes you back in time if you were old enough to experience these books when they were out. I'm not. I'm a little younger than that. But getting my hands on the PDFs and looking at it, I definitely see hard inspiration from this. But it's not a copy. It's definitely different. There are some things that are different. Armor class is something that is different between these two games, and a couple of other things. It's not a word-for-word copy by any stretch. Gonnerman and crew really did a good job capturing the essence and the feel of these games and bringing them into the modern era. And ultimately, from what I understand, kind of kicking off the old-school renaissance, the OSR. So anyway, back to the game that we are looking at. One thing you'll note about Basic Fantasy is that it's a single book. It's not like Dungeons and Dragons where you have a Dungeon Master Guide and a Player's Guide and a Bestiary, whatever, I don't remember what they call it. You have just the one book, and it's got everything you need to play. Part 1 is kind of an introduction into role-playing games, but then Part 2 to Part 5 is character creation and going over the basic rules of the game. So we will be touching on Parts 2, 3, 4, and 5. If you'll notice over here, Part 6 is Monsters, and that starts on page 54, and then Treasure is on 129. So there's 75 pages of just Monsters. No separate book to acquire. And then, as you'll notice right here in Part 8, is some GM information, some Game Master information, so no separate Game Master tome. Now, I will say that there are additional monsters available on the website in the field guides, and I encourage you to check those out as well, but to kick off right from the gate, you really only need the one book. So enough of my introduction to the game. We're just going to get started on player characters. So, to create a character, rules is written for Basic Fantasy. You start by rolling 3d6 for each ability score. If you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons, they're the same abilities that you're familiar with. Strength, Intelligence, Wisdom, Dexterity, Constitution, and Charisma. And you roll a 3d6 for those, and what you get is your score. And then you have a bonus or penalty to apply to it depending on what the number is, from -3 to +3. Now, I do not roll 3d6 for my ability scores anymore. I've actually changed that in my own home game, and I use a rule that's used in other games, but the one that comes to mind that definitely has it is Varg Vikernes' role-playing game Mifrog. You cast 4d6, and then you discard the lowest die, and that's your ability score, and that generally gives you a higher ability score. And I'll give you an example. So, okay, so with this roll, we'll discard 3, and that gives us 15, 6, 5, and 4, which is great. And the reason that the fourth die makes the difference is, what if that 3 was here instead of the 6, and it was 3, 4, and 5? Well, that would be 12. So we have that little extra kick here. And I think I'm going to keep this as the initial roll. We'll just go from there. So that will be our strength score. And like I said, we are rolling for a fighter magic user, which also means we also have race already figured out. Only elves in basic fantasy can be combination classes, so that's already something that we don't have to deal with. That's already taken off our plate. So let's roll for intelligence. Now here we will be dropping the 1, and so our score will be 14. Again for wisdom. Great roll. Great roll. And this will actually bring up something else that I do as well when I'm creating a character, but I'm not going to get into it right now. So right now, our wisdom score is 17. Dexterity. See, we're getting some really good rolls in here. These could be considerably different, which is why I prefer the 4d6 minus 1 die system. 11. That could be better, but that's okay. And 12 here. Okay. So let me get our modifiers pulled up here as well. Alright, so as we have it, strength is 15, intelligence 14, wisdom 17, dexterity 13, constitution 11, and charisma 12. Now what I brought up that I also do in my games is if I have a roll on 1 or 2 abilities that I feel like would go better with a different ability, I will swap them out. Like for instance, a fighter magic user doesn't need a really high wisdom. Now, I could argue because of my use of perception, and if you've watched my show, I use the perception check a lot. It's kind of like my go-to roll on seeing whether or not a character knows what's going on. So I do have the possibility of keeping this, and that's a +2 on wisdom, which would be a consistent +2 on perception rolls for this fighter magic user. But they're an NPC, at least they are right now, so I don't know if I'm going to keep that. So I don't know if I'm going to be too worried about what their roles are. They may join the party, they may not. I think what I'm going to do, because the 15, like if I swap wisdom for strength, the 17 would give a +2. The +2 will be a bonus to any attacks made as well as damage. And then the 15 will still give a +1 on perception. And if I give this character skills and kind of make it an official character, then he'll already have skills and have proficiency in these skills as he levels. And that's something else I'll go over as well. So I'm not trying to skip steps, but I do think I'm going to go ahead and swap the wisdom score for the strength score and make strength 17 and wisdom 15. The rest of them look okay. There are no negatives, so I'm not going to worry about that. And so with that, I have strength 17 +2, intelligence 14 +1, wisdom 15 +1, dexterity 13 +1, constitution 11 +0, charisma 12 +0. Okay. I'm going to skip this section here. If you need to go over what each attribute does, then feel free to download the PDF. I encourage you to download the PDF and read it for yourself. We're going to go over hit points and hit dice. Now, something that I do for my characters that is not rules as written is I give them maximum HP for their hit dice, at least for the first couple of levels. And the reason being for that, if we come down here to the classes, we see that there can be a very wide difference in hit points. So a cleric can have anywhere between 1 and 6 starting HP, a fighter 1 and 8. Then you get down to magic users and thieves, it could be a 1 to 4. I don't know about you, but I would hate to roll a 1 on my magic user or a 1 on my thief and get down into a dungeon and get smoked within the first 5 minutes of the game. So I've always, especially when I play with my now 9-year-old, but when he was younger especially, I made it a point that for the first couple of levels, at least, I would give maximum HP. So that would be, say for a thief, he would have 4, next level up he would have 8, Next level up after that, he would have 12. And not stress about it. You know, maybe down the line, we could do the, rolling 9d4 on level 9. But I really think it removes an element that I know is important to old school games, and if I were playing a game with a group of adults, I wouldn't stress on this too much. But I think for my home game, this works out really well for me. It also helps when I'm playing solo as well. So yeah, it is a little something that I do keep for myself. Now, for a combination class, as you see here under the races section, there is a combination classes section, and only elves can be combination classes. A combination class is cool, but at the same time it comes with some caveats. They must meet the requirements of both classes, so the prime requisite for a fighter being strength and the prime requisite for a magic user being intelligence, they have to at least meet that. So, just to touch on that real quick, the prime requisite for a magic user is intelligence. A character must have an intelligence of 9 or higher to become a magic user. And with a fighter, it is also the same thing. Must have a strength score of 9 or higher to become a fighter. Our elf here does meet both of those requirements. They do get some nice things. They do get the best attack bonus and the best saving throw values of either of the two original classes. But they must gain experience equal to the combined requirements of both base classes to advance in levels. So in the case of a fighter magic user, that's the 2000 XP to get to level 2, plus the 2500 XP to get to level 2 for the magic user, for a total of 4500 XP. So they are slow going. But a fighter magic user can wear armor, a fighter magic user can use a sword. Those things are not allowed for magic users alone. And also, that gives, now you also have a fighter that can cast magic as well. So it's a really cool combo class, but it's not for people who want to advance quickly, because 4500 XP is a lot in this game. They do not just hand out XP willy-nilly. Obviously, the Game Master can hand out XP as he or she sees fit, but you're not going to slay a monster and get 1000 XP. And even if you did, you have to split it among the party, so not everybody's getting 1000. But I digress. Alright, so yeah, here's the section on character races: dwarves, elves, halflings, and humans. They all have special abilities, and some have special saving throws. The demi-humans have special saving throws. Really the only special ability for a human is they get an extra 10% bonus on all XP earned, which is great, but they don't get any bonuses on saving throws. So now this brings me into another document that's available at basicfantasy.org. It is the Ultimate Character Charts. This is an absolutely beautiful document. Great for starting characters, replacement characters, pre-gen characters, NPCs, which I'm doing today, villains. It's amazing. So what it is it's all the information that's spread out throughout the first 5 chapters of the core rulebook, and they're put into charts for each race and class combination that could exist in the core rules of the game. It doesn't have any of the additional races that are in the new races supplement, like half orc, half elf, gnome. That's not in here. But if you're just playing the 4 races and the 4 classes and even the combo classes of the core rulebook, this is a really, really great tool. Easy to, for character creation, very easy for leveling a character up. It's amazing. So here's our elf fighter magic user chart, and as you can see, it's got it all laid out. I have a 1d6 hit die because elves can't have a higher than a 1d6. It's got my attack bonus, it's got my saving throws, and they've already been calculated in for the racial advantages of the elf. So I don't have to pull up the saving throw chart, find my class, and in this case, find the best of the 2 because it takes both sets of saving throws for the fighter and the magic user and picks the best of those saving throws, and then also figure out the racial modifiers. It totally simplifies everything. I love this document. I use it all the time. And then it also tells me how many spells I know on each level. Now, this not being a player character but an NPC, we need to figure out what level this character is. And honestly, we should probably figure out a sex as well. Is it a male or is it a female? So let's start there. I'm going to pull up my random number generator. And we'll say 1 for male, 2 for female. Alright, it's a female. She's a female. And now we need to figure out level. I think it's fair to say no higher than level 4. Especially if they do join the party, I don't want to roll a d6 and get a 6, and now I've got a level 6 character and a bunch of level 1s and level 2s running around. I think a simple d4 roll will give us our level here. A level 4. Interesting. Okay. So back to the beauty of this document. Now I don't have to go through and look at a bunch of charts to try to figure out hit dice, attack bonus, saving throws, and numbers and levels of spells. It's all right here. And so, like I said, with my game, I will give max hit points. And so, 6 times 4, 24. So this character's already got 24 HP. Her attack bonus is +3. Awesome. And I will get saving throws and all of that onto a character sheet later. It's all right here. I don't have to worry about it. And to kind of give you an understanding of what I mean for those who have never played Basic Fantasy, I'm in no way talking badly about the game, but it's all spread out. So, races, classes. Then we'll get into weapons here in a little bit. I'm going to move on to another document that's really good for quick character generation. But we have cost of weapons and equipment, explanation of equipment, vehicles, siege engines, etc. We will be getting into spells because our fighter magic user has 2 level 1 spells and 2 level 2 spells. So we'll be going over those in the magic user spells section, but not right this minute. The adventure is where you will find carrying capacity as well as movement and encumbrance. We will touch on that in a little bit. And the encounter section is where we've got a number of other things that are important for character creation. The attack bonus table. Clerics versus the undead if you have a cleric. And saving throws. And this is what I was talking about with saving throws. It's only got the 4 classes, so I would have to go match up. Well, we're at level 4, so level 4 here and level 4 here, and go, okay, she's got a better roll for death ray or poison here, but she's got a better roll for spells here. So that ultimate character charts document comes in handy real quick. And we're going to move on to my other document that I use. This one is also really great. Quick character generation. It's really, really good. Chart A starts out with what we did using the 4d6. But if you really want to streamline creating a character, it's as simple as to get all 6 abilities. You would just roll a d20 and come down here. 5. So I would come over here, strength 16, intelligence 9, etc., and that would just go immediately onto the sheet. But we already did that, so we're going to move downward. Here's where it really gets good for giving depth to your character, whether PC or NPC. Rolling on these charts gives you some real quick background information on them, gives, so you have a sense of motive, you have a sense of where they came from. It's a really, really great document. I started using it just not all that long ago, and I really fell in love with it. So all of my future characters are coming off of this generator. So enough talking, let's roll some dice and see what we can come up with. Alright, so since we already have ability score, we're going to come down here to character background, and we're going to figure out the birth order of our elf. What order was she born in? She is the third born, okay? Of how many children? That's not on the chart, but maybe we can figure out how many brothers and sisters she has. Third of 6. Okay. Awesome. So next we need to figure out the parent occupation. 14. Actor, bard, courtesan. Alright, her parents could be actors or bards. I don't really have bards in here. Alright, one more, and then we'll just call it 15. Government official. Okay. Her parents were government officials. And then I have to roll on the 2B chart. So a D8. 8. Royal or Dougal? Royal advisor. Okay, cool. Alright. I don't think there's anything else in chart 2 that I need to roll. Okay, chart 3, significant events in childhood and adolescence. Get a D20. I can roll this up to 4 times. Let's see what happens. 20. Committed a crime. Okay, that's interesting. A young female elf living in a world of high status and affluence decides to go a little bad. Go a little on the rebellious side. Okay. So now I need to roll on the 3D chart. What type of crime did you commit, young lady? 18. Roll twice. Okay. 11. Political dissidence. Ooh, interesting. Didn't like the king. Roll again. Murder. I don't know if I want to do that to this young elf fighter, magic user. Something to note, there is no alignment in Basic Fantasy as you would see in other OSR games or in Dungeons & Dragons. You can certainly add alignment. There is an alignment supplement on the website. You can also just pull alignment from any other game and add it in here. Whether the original 3 alignment system of lawful, neutral, or chaotic, or the 9-way system of like lawful good all the way to chaotic evil. I'm not going to get into that. But you certainly can add it. But that brings me back to this murder thing. I tell you what, without getting too much into it, I don't like it. I'm going to go ahead and roll again. 16. Wrong place at the wrong time. Not really befitting. I'm not going to roll on these forever. Wow, back to... Oh, no, 9. I was supposed to say, wow, back to murder. Tax evasion. 10. Alright, we're back at political dissidence. Let's just do that. Like, she publicly denounced the king. The king didn't like that. You know, certainly not from the mouth of his advisor's daughter. So, we'll just play that. Now. Okay, that was the significant event in adolescence, childhood and adolescence. I'm not going to roll again. This is just an NPC. If I want to come back and give a little more depth, I will. But we have chart 4, significant event in young adulthood. Okay, developed virtues or vices. So I think another random number generator would be appropriate here. Let's say 1 for virtue, 2 for vice. Alright, she developed a vice. What vice did we develop? So I need to roll on 4D. 20. Sacrilegious. Okay. That's certainly going to butt heads against Fritz, our normal cleric, but we will go on ahead and put that down. Doesn't mean she has to remain that way, and also She's not guaranteed to join the party either, so I might be getting a little too attached to her already. Which is kind of where I was ultimately getting at when it comes to giving certainly lower level characters max HP. You spend an hour creating a character, give it a name, give it the time it takes to roll all of this and go through each chart and each table, and you have this character, you're ready to play. You sit down and a kobold wipes you out in your first battle on their first initiative number. That's just a bummer. So, even though this is an NPC that's not like to join the party, or if she does, it might not be permanent, but I've already got investment in her. I've already got some information about her, and I'm like, I didn't want her to be a murderer. She's kind of a blasphemer, but that'll create a little conflict with Fritz, so that'll be interesting. Okay. Now, with equipment, first level characters roll once on each of the following tables without modifiers, or you can add a +1 per extra level to each roll for characters starting at a higher level than first, up to a maximum of +5. So with our yet-to-be-named female elf, she will get a +3 as a level 4. So let's roll on armor. Oh, and of course, she starts out with her spell book, because it looks like combo classes begin with all relevant items, so a magic user thief, which is the other combo class, would have both thieves' tools and a spell book, so she's already got a spell book, I will put that. And it looks like as a fighter, she gets an extra roll on either weapon chart, so we'll keep that in mind. Alright, armor. So 3 and then +3, she's got chainmail. Okay. But I do get an extra roll with this asterisk here on either melee or missile, or I'll add a shield. Since I already get an extra roll on either weapon chart, being a fighter, I'm going to go on ahead and take the shield. Might as well. Okay, now I'm going to roll on her melee weapon, and I also need to remember she gets a +3 to this roll, being level 4. 4. We do 4 + 3, and that is pick any 2 above. Okay. I'm thinking longsword. Kind of wish I'd gotten an 8. That'd be great. +1 magical weapon. Oh well. Longsword. That's a D8 damage. Do I want a battle axe or do I want a hand axe? I think I'm going to go with a hand axe. That's something that she could carry on her side and it would still give 1d6 damage. Okay. Now I get a roll on her missile weapon, being a fighter. I can roll on either, but I did get 2 melees, so I might as well roll on missile. 1. Sling. Oh, 1 + 3 though. Throwing axe or spear. Alright, I think I'm going to go with a spear. That sounds good. Now let's roll on her adventuring gear. Bundle C, or I could do a +3 and get a magic item. I could. Maybe I should. Well, let's go over magic items real quick. I've not touched on those yet. So here is the magic item generation section in the book, in Part 7, Treasures. See, these are weapons and armor. We don't have any of that. Could be a potion, could be a scroll, could be a ring, or it could be any of these miscellaneous magic items. Okay, I think what I'll do is I will, since there are 5 sections, 4 items, potions, scrolls, rings, wands, staves, and rods, and miscellaneous, I will do a random number of 1 to 5, and then I will roll the percentile dice as they are on the generator. Five. Alright, so that looks like it is a miscellaneous magic item. So let me get my percentile dice up. 86. Medallion of ESP. Alright, we'll check that out real quick and then we'll finish up. Medallion of ESP. This appears to be a normal pendant disc hung from a neck chain. Usually fashioned from bronze, copper, or nickel silver, the medallion allows the wearer to read the thoughts of others, as with the spell ESP. It can be used as many times per day as desired, but each such usage requires a minimum of 1 round of full concentration to activate, and the wearer must continue to concentrate to maintain the effect. Cool, I like it. I still did not get a bundle though, but because I rolled a 5 for her, I'm going to go on ahead and give her bundle C, which also comes with backpack, pouch, bedroll, water skin, tinderbox, and 7 days worth of rations. So I'll go ahead and add bundle C. It would be silly for her to be walking around without basic adventuring gear. Now let's figure out what type of mount she has. 4 plus 3, so she has a warhorse. Sweet. Alright, and her starting wealth. 6 plus 3, 200 gold. Very nice. Okay, that is the end of our quick character generation document. So all that's left now is to name her and assign her skills. So I'm going to come over to fantasynamegenerators.com. And I generally have much better luck under fantasy and folklore than I do under pop culture. So I'll go through here and I'll cycle through these female names. Usually when I do something like this, I don't normally pick it as is. I'll generally find a first name that I like, and then if I don't like the family name, or the surname, I will cycle through until I find a surname that I like. So I'll pause for a minute and just kind of cycle through, and I'll let you know what I come up with. Okay, so the name that I came up with was Aerith Ostwin. And if you get the reference with Aerith, you're awesome. That came up in the generator. I thought it was cool. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take it. I did not really find a last name that I cared for, so I kind of played off of Druindar's last name, which is Norgwyn. And I gave her the last name Ostwin. So Norgwyn being more like north, Norway, Norga, north, Ost being east. So I called her Aerith Ostwin. And I'll show you her character sheet in a little bit. I failed to do the skills like I said I would. So I'm going to pull up the secondary skills supplement and just kind of go over it and then explain to you how I use it, and then I'll add her skills in later. So secondary skills are any additional skills from a character's background. And they're skills that the character has from before their adventuring lives, or skills that could be considered part of their character class. And it kind of adds a little depth to the character. If you've ever played a role-playing game with a skill check mechanic, then this is basically just that. And here are the ones from the supplement. Now, of course, you don't have to use these. You can use any secondary skills that you want. The Dungeons & Dragons Rules Cyclopedia has a wonderful section on skills, so if you can get your hands on that, I recommend it. I'll just kind of show you the sample skills table in Rules Cyclopedia, just to kind of give you an idea. I don't want Wizards to flag this video over copyright, so I'm not going to show you much, but it will give you an idea on old school skill checks. and how you could add that in to basic fantasy very easily. Okay, so here's chapter 5 of the Rules Cyclopedia. I highly recommend getting your hands on this as just kind of like a confluence of all of the basic and expert rules to give you an idea of where games like Basic Fantasy and other OSR games have come from. It's a great resource, and it really helps me fill in some gaps that I don't understand because I did not grow up playing tabletop role-playing games, and by the time I was old enough, I believe 4th edition was already out, so the whole old school game scene was out of the way. So here's just a sample of, skills based on abilities. And it's a great list. This whole section's worth reading, and it really fleshes out what the secondary skills supplement is bringing to the table. Some of this stuff is written with a bit of an assumption that you've played games like this before. I fell into the OSR. I'm not a fan of 5e. I'm not a fan of 5e culture. I actually came across Basic Fantasy by watching a video by Varg Vikernes, who talked about how it was very much similar to the basic expert rules that he played as a child. And even for his game Mifrog, he references Rules Cyclopedia. So definitely worth a read, definitely pick it up. It'll kind of give you a lot of context on what old school D20 games were like. So enough of that before I get flagged by wizards. But here is the secondary skills supplement for Basic Fantasy. Several of the skills that I just happened to show you for Rules Cyclopedia are listed here. The wording might be a little different, but more or less they're pretty comparable. But of course, use whatever skills that you want. It's your game. I'll kind of go through here slowly so you can see it, but of course you can download it from basicfantasy.org and get it for yourself. And go through it. I won't go through the process of picking skills, but I will touch on how I do it. I will look at the abilities of a character, and I will start with the general skills, because anybody can learn the general skills. And then I'll go through there and pick ones that make sense. Generally, I'll definitely generally hit jump for anybody with strength, as well as swim. Survival looks important. I often add heal to clerics. But then you get into, like here, cleric class skills, fighter class skills, magic user class skills, and thief class skills. Now, down here it says, under optional, a character may take a skill not normally allowed to his or her class. However, the cost of the skill is 3 skill points, and I'll kind of touch on that as well when I show you a character that I have added skills to. You get 3 skill points. Let me kind of scoot that back up here and go over the mechanics. So all the skills start at level 1 and use the target number on the ability roll chart, shown here. Every level after first level, the character gets 3 skill level points that he or she can apply to any skill or skills as they see fit, so long as the skill level does not exceed his or her character level. If the character has a background or additional knowledge in a skill, like the son or daughter of a blacksmith, then that character receives a +1 bonus on skills that deal with the additional knowledge. All skills on another class list are considered non-skilled and have a target number of 20. These skills cannot be raised through the use of skill points. Using a non-skilled skill from the general list or your character's class list has a target number of 17. Then there are optional rules down here that a character may take a skill not normally allowed to his or her class. However, the cost of the skill is 3 skill points. For example, the first level fighter takes the Escape Artist skill. It costs 3 skill level points, and the character may not select another skill until he or she reaches 2nd level. The target number is still 17 for these skills. And then another optional rule, skill points per level are equal to the character's charisma bonus with a minimum of 1 point per level. I've not used either of these optional skill rules yet. I have not officially started using this skill supplement in my normal game, but having previously picked up skills back when I was playing BX, Rules Cyclopedia, for Palace of the Silver Princess, I saw the benefit in using skills. So I'm going to start adding them into my normal game. Therefore, I've not used the optional skill rules yet. I will explain to you how I use the skill rules, because I feel like this section is missing an example of how it would be used, unless it's kind of left up to your discretion on what to do. So normally, because you get 3 skill level points per level, I give my characters 4 secondary skills. They also have their background skill, if I've done a background on them. So I'll pull up Aldrich and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's Aldrich's character sheet. I'll go over this character sheet in a moment, but it's my favorite character sheet available on the website by far. But going down here to skills, see, he has a background skill in alchemy, because his parents were alchemists. So I've already given him the +1 for that. If the character has a background or additional knowledge in a skill, then that character receives a +1 bonus on skills that deal with the additional knowledge. So if there's any time that Aldrich needs to identify some alchemical property, he'll have that +1. But Jump, Intimidate, Swim, and Perception are all at level 1 with no additional modifier here. So he'll roll against a target of 17 and then use the ability modifier that's over here based on the skill type. And I'll kind of talk about Intimidate and Perception briefly because I do it a little differently. But so if Aldrich wants to use Jump, so say he wanted to use a high jump, and a high jump is a vertical leap made to reach a ledge high above or to grasp something overhead. The target number would not actually be the 17 for his current level, but it would actually be equal to 4 times the distance to be cleared. Okay, that actually makes sense. If he has to jump 4 feet into the air, then his target number would be 16. If he has to jump 10 feet in the air, his target number would be 40. That totally makes sense. So with that, he's got to high jump 4 feet into the air. So he has now a target number of 16. And we would roll a d20 and add his strength modifier. And let's see what would happen. Okay, 5. Not great, but it would be 5 plus 2, so 7. And eventually, as he levels up these skills, like I said, there are 3 skill levels given, and let's say he adds it to Jump. Then that roll would have been 5 plus 1 plus 2. Still not getting it, but eventually, as he levels up, a 5 could possibly get him to 16. I think that really makes sense. As a character levels up, therefore they become more skillful. Now the reason I gave 4 was so that not all the skills could be leveled up at once. Like if they just start with 3 and they're able to have 3 points, then they're able to boom, 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 or boom, 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 or whatever, and then there's no decision to be made. There's no skill that kind of gets a lower advantage than the others. And that just kind of made sense to me. To give them a minimum starting point of 4, so the players aren't continuously just upping these skills. They have to choose, okay, do I want to add a +1 to Intimidate? Do I want to add 1 to Perception? Do I want to add 1 to my background? And that to me just made sense. Like I said, it's not entirely clear what the number of starting skills is, but that's what I've come up with. Now let's talk about Intimidate and Perception real quick. So they actually happen to be right here on the same page. Intimidate in the secondary skill supplement is listed as a charisma check. In Rules Cyclopedia, it's listed under strength skills. And I can see both sides of the argument. Intimidation can be a charismatic thing where you threaten an individual to intimidate them, but not necessarily as a flex of strength, but like just casually threatening an individual to intimidate them. That makes total sense as a charisma check. However, if you have a strong fighter, he's got muscles, he's kind of big, maybe he's more of a barbarian type, intimidation would definitely come as a strength check. Because a creature or a character may look at this big bad dude who just told them to do something, and that can be intimidating. So I chose intimidation to be either strength or charisma. And actually, one of my characters does have Intimidate as a charisma check. It is our good buddy, Magenhild the Mighty. He's strong, don't get me wrong. He's also more charismatic than anything else. So I gave him Intimidate as a charisma check. That maybe he just kind of slips in a threat that after a charisma check, the creature or character believes. So I see either or with that. Now let's talk about perception. I've used perception quite a bit in the episodes that I've recorded. I have ultimately created perception as a combination of both sense motive and spot. Sense motive is a skill involving making an assessment of the situation, getting a feeling from another's behavior that something is wrong. Alternately, you can get the feeling that someone is trustworthy. Spot is the ability to detect characters or creatures who are hiding, and you can also use it to read lips. To me, those just kind of seem like something that could file under how perceptive are you? Are you perceptive enough to read a person's motive? Are you perceptive enough to detect someone in disguise? So I've combined these two. They're both wisdom checks. That's just what I've done. Of course, you can do whatever. And with that, I believe our character creation is done. I will show you our new Elven Fighter Magic user, Aerith Ostwin. So here she is. All of her stuff is laid out, her abilities, her armor class, her HP, her attack bonus. I did not do movement. Okay. I will have to fix that in an image editor. Oops. Here are her skills. See, I also gave her an intimidation on strength, and because she's level 4, she has been able to level up all of these. So you can see kind of how that works. Like, she could have, over the course of the last 3 levels, thrown everything at jump, or everything at intimidate, or everything at perception, and then everything else would still be at 0, with the exception of her background skill, which is diplomacy, because she is the daughter of royal advisors. So I gave her that background skill. But she's ultimately decided to level everything up evenly. Now, she could also get another class-based skill, and it would start at 0, and then she can start pumping skill level points into that, or she could buy another skill that's outside of fighter magic user. That's totally up to her as it continues to go. I also did not do her spells beyond read magic. She does have 2 level 1 spells and 2 level 2 spells. So let's just do that right now. Let me pull up the core rule book under the spells section, so I'll pause and I'll do that. Okay, so here is part 3, spells. Scroll down to magic user. Okay, so like I said, she has 2 first level magic user spells and 2 second level spells. What I could do, and likely the easiest thing I could do, is roll 2d12 to determine what spells she has per level. So 2d12 here, 2d12 here. I could do that. Also, do I want to use the supplemental new spells? Let me pull that up and I'll go over it, and I'll try to figure out if I want to do that. Okay, here is the new spells supplement available on the website. And what it does is it increases the spell levels up to 7th level. And so as you can see here in the core rules, it only goes up to 6th level magic user spells, 6th level clerical spells. This will bring it up to 7th level. It has a revised set of tables for both cleric and magic user on when they would get these spells. And then also it has some different classes that are available in another supplement. I'm not going to get into that. But ultimately you could use this cleric table for a druid, and then you can use the magic user table for illusionists, necromancers, and spellcrafters. But anyway, so it looks like their first 7th level spell would be at level 14 for a cleric, and for a magic user, level 13. And then here are the list of 7th level spells. So for cleric, druid, magic user, illusionist, necromancer, spellcrafter. There are also new lower level spells as well. So for our elf, we could add into the options Alarm, Mage Armor, Mount, or Unseen Servant, as well as Analyze Magic and Familiar. I don't think I'm going to do that with our elf this go around. It just adds a little more complication for an NPC. But this is a cool supplement to check out, so I highly recommend it. I may add in the 7th level spells. That's not something that I have to deal with today. She's only level 4. But it's cool to have, and maybe I'll give her, because she'll have the option of other 1st, 2nd, 3rd level spells, etc. As she levels up. So should she join the party and I do decide to use this, I have it available. So let's just close that out, and let's get back over here. Now, like I was saying, probably the easiest way I could go about determining these spells would be to roll 2d12 per level, and just using that instead of going through, because they're all not, I mean, because they're all decent. She doesn't need ESP because of her medallion of ESP, so if I roll a 4 on 2nd level, I may discard that. But yeah, let's go ahead just to speed things along. I'll go ahead and roll 2d12 per spell level, and we'll determine it that way. Okay, so our first level spell will be 12, Ventriloquism. Okay. Not bad at all. Alright, we'll roll our second 1st level spell. Nope, we already have that. 9. Read languages. Okay. Alright, and our level 2 spells. 5, invisibility, nice. And locate object. Nice. I can see where those will be helpful. So since I went ahead and scanned in her character sheet already, I will go ahead in an image editor and add those 4 spells in. Like I said, I also need to do her encumbrance, and I will. Now, of course, you do not have to pick your spells the way I did by just, throwing dice. Her being an NPC, wasn't too worried about it. Besides, those are some pretty decent spells, so I'm not going to worry about that at all. But I've got her vice, her background, starting money, her horse, her equipment, her medallion of ESP. So here is Aerith Osterman. So before I close out, I'll kind of touch on character sheets real quick. There are several options on the website. I have not used all of them, but I have used a couple. And I ultimately landed on this one by Brian Scalise. It's a solid character sheet. I did change something on it, and that's down here with skills. On the normal character sheet it says notes, so let me just pull that up. Alright, so here is the character sheet by Brian Scalise that you can find at basicfantasy.org. And I love it. It's got everything on it. And what's nice is it also gives some reminders of what abilities would influence some things. So like armor class, Aerith had a +1, and so that upped her armor class beyond the 15 for the chainmail and the +1 for shield. She then adds a +1 for dexterity for a total of 17. Constitution affects hit points, so if you have a +1, +2, +3 to Constitution, that would add to the total number of hit points here. Turn Undead is here, Thief Abilities is here, Surprise Range, Initiative, Movement and Encumbrance, your ability roll target, your saving throws, and then any modifiers to very specific saving throws. So you add your Constitution to Poison, Intelligence to Illusion Magic, and Wisdom to Mind Control. Down here is really great with the weapons. Weapon name, any plus or minus. If it's magical, so a +1, or a negative number if it's cursed. Its damage die. And then for your ranged weapons, your short range, your medium range, and your long range, and the +1, +0, -2 on that. And also rate of reload for your crossbows. This is really nice, the ammunition area where you're able to put down, so like if a character had a longbow, then you would have long arrows down here, and then you can keep up with how many arrows you have used in the game. Any retainers, specialists, mercenaries, etc. All of your equipment is listed here. Magic items, money, gems and jewelry. This is another lovely section of it for our clerics and magic users. Having all of your spells listed. Something else to note too before I move on is all of these sections have page numbers for where to find information on this in the core rulebook. The one I have, I believe, has just the 3rd edition pages. I don't know if there's an updated one for the 4th edition yet. So your page numbers could be different if you're using 4E. But your spells, level of spell, spell name, page number it can be found on, and how many you've prepped. Also, how many spells per day and their levels are down here too. Racial features, class features, language, physical description, sketch, personal traits, and background. All of that's here. Total weight carried if you want to be super specific about movement and encumbrance. I'm really not, but yeah, it's a wonderful character sheet. Now, the one thing I did modify on it is when I added skills to my game, there's not a skills place on here. I was initially just putting it under notes, but then I put it in an image editor and I changed it from notes to skills. So it looks like this now. Same font, I just kind of took from different letters throughout the character sheet to ultimately create it where it says skills. I don't have this uploaded anywhere. I will try to do that if anybody's interested in having the exact character sheet that I use, but that's the only thing I changed. Everything else is the same. It's a wonderful character sheet. I highly recommend it. Some other options include this one. This one was really nice for me to come across because when I was playing BX Rules Cyclopedia for Palace of the Silver Princess, I actually used pretty much the same character sheet, and somebody was kind enough to take that character sheet and modify it for Basic Fantasy. And as you can see here, it does have an area for special abilities or skills. Let me show you the one I used in D&D real quick, and I'll show you how it was nice to see this, and this was an option I could use. But I'd already been using the one from Brian previously, the one I just showed you, before I did my experiment with doing old school BX and Rules Cyclopedia rules. So I did not, when I came back to Basic Fantasy, use this, but it was really cool to see, and it made me feel like, oh, well, if I use this, I'll feel comfortable. Let me show you the original. I say it's the original, I don't really know. But as you can tell, it is the same character sheet. Obviously, alignment's over here, but not over here because it's not used in Basic Fantasy. But then all of the attributes, AC, AB, although this is listed as wrestling rate. Oh, that's right, because of the descending AC in old school D&D. And the attack bonus is for ascending armor class. But anyway, level, HP, your sketch, saving throws. Now down here, there's weapon mastery. That's something I also might look into for my Basic Fantasy game to kind of, you know, as an adventurer moves forward in adventuring, he becomes proficient in a weapon, and that makes him better at it. But here is something that I really had a hard time wrapping my head around when I was playing the BECMI Rules Cyclopedia game, was descending armor class. The lower the armor class, the stronger the character was. And here is an attack rolls table from the Rules Cyclopedia. And as you can see, it is just a very complicated system of a bunch of different numbers that you have to keep up with. And ultimately, you're stuck with just a chart in front of you. And it was very difficult for somebody who had only been using ascending armor class to understand. They tried to simplify it with THAC0 to hit AC of 0. Another one I just did not fully understand. And so it was one of those things where you would roll a d20 and then you would check on the chart what armor class you could hit. So if you rolled a d20 and you got a 13, you could hit a level 1 through 5 magic user with a 6. And I may not even be describing that correctly. It was incredibly complicated, and I just didn't like it. The ascending armor class is definitely more simple, and it's the attack bonus that kind of levels that out. So anyway, parts of this were changed. Here's where spells are listed. Oh, and here's skill mastery. I'm sorry, not special abilities. But anyway, this is a great character sheet here. I'll close out the old D&D one. And if you're a fan of the descending armor class and THAC0 and all of that, kudos to you. More math than I want in a game. I don't hate math, but bro, too many charts, too much math. So this is a good one. This is by Phil Morris. It's on the website. And here's one more I want to touch on. And I think it's a really great character sheet if you have younger kids that you want to play Basic Fantasy with. Because I'm telling you now, I started playing Basic Fantasy with my son when he was 5. That might have been a little young, but I would definitely say by 7, I don't see where they would have any issue with this, especially if you started with something like Hero Kids, which is actually how we started, was Hero Kids, but we only played it a little bit because I wanted to move into Basic Fantasy. I wanted to play the game, so I kind of pushed it a little bit. But ultimately, this nice landscape character sheet was really, really helpful for my 5-year-old. And actually, I think we used it up until he was 7, and then we switched over to the main one that I was showing you by Brian Scalise. But it's all one page, and it's got nice little pictures that kids can definitely grasp onto. You know, armor class, got a shield, hit points, a heart, melee, swords, ranged. And it doesn't even use missile. That's something else too I didn't realize at the... maybe I realized at the time, but, you know, ranged, a bow. And then all of your weapons and all of that listed here. Obviously there's not a whole lot of room for everything because it's on one sheet, but if you're playing a very simple game with a small child or, you know, some mixed-aged children, then I really can't recommend this one enough. This one is by Simone Feli. I'm sorry if I messed up your name. Wonderful character sheet for younger kids. So I recommend this highly if you're trying to get your kids into RPGs. One last thing I want to touch on, and I'll probably stop saying that, is a supplement that is really great if you don't want to do anything that we just did, and you want to pull up a pre-gen character or an NPC for characters level 1 to 9. Here is Krista John's Coterie. I think I'm saying that right. Google says I'm saying Coterie right. Anyway, this is a great supplement. As a matter of fact, I believe you will recognize a character real quick. I'll get to him in a second. But as you can see, it goes through class. So first level characters, clerics. There are 8 clerics here. Then you have fighters, 1d8. And here's where we're going to come up on a recognized figure. Here's Magenhild the Mighty. I pulled him up mid-game because I didn't want to go through character creation. Full background of everything that I told you about him is right here. All of the relevant information for him is right here. Totally saved me in the middle of an episode when I rolled a new PC up on the Oracle, and I'm like, I don't want to stop for an hour and create a new character. And then, you know, it keeps going. Now, let's say we wanted to find a 4th level fighter magic user, just to see what Aerith could have been. It does occur to me while I was hunting this down that it doesn't have combo classes, but any elf that you find in either magic user or fighter could then become a combo of both. And then that's where the ultimate character charts would really come in handy as well to kind of create that. But Aerith could have been any of these people. And of course, you can always just change the race if you want to make them a combo class. Great document. I love this. I keep it on hand just in case. But also available at the BasicFantasy.org website. So I just encourage you, if you have not checked this game out, go to BasicFantasy.org and check this game out. If you have, and you play it, what a great game. I just cannot thank Chris Gonnerman and Party enough for creating this game. I hope that at some point I can contribute to the project, but maybe even this podcast is just a contribution, just kind of getting the word out a little bit. It's a little undersung when it comes to OSR games. Other titles seem to be more prevalent, at least that I see on like YouTube and stuff. But BFRPG, hands down, will always recommend, and I can't recommend it enough. It's amazing. So with that, I think I'm done here. I hope this was informative, and I hope this gives you some options when you are creating characters for Basic Fantasy. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out thing. There are plenty of resources on the website for you to just get started. You know, as I said, there are pre-gen characters in a lot of the modules. You have Chrysogen's Coterie, you have the quick character generation, and you have the ultimate character charts. No excuses. Get out there, create some characters, chuck some dice, play a game. Also, if you're just a guy or gal who can't find anybody in person to play with and you really want to play a game, I cannot recommend enough the Discord for Basic Fantasy. It's on the website. So is the Facebook group. I don't have as much interaction with the Facebook group as I do the Discord, but that's where I found the guys that I play with. And then, of course, you can always play solo. Feel free to play solo. Nothing's stopping you. Get out there and play. And with that, GM Wolfgang is out. I'll see you guys on the next one. I may do episode 0 next, where I kind of give the background for the whole story before I do episode 8. I probably ought to do it before I go too much further, because then nobody's going to care. But I really enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you guys in the next one.